Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties, from Keweenaw to Monroe, Chippewa to Berrien. Brought to you by the Michigan Association of Counties. Here's your host, MAC Executive Director, Stephan.
All right, welcome to Podcast 83, everyone. The podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Of course, I'm joined by Deena, Bosworth, and Meghann Keit from our staff. Hope everyone had a great weekend. The weather's kind of warming up now. We might actually be able to say we're past winter now in Michigan, although, I got married. Actually, my anniversary is tomorrow, and it snowed on my wedding day. So that was a long time ago. So you can never feel too safe here in Michigan. But so let's get started. We got a bunch of topics to go over. Of course, top of mind with the new guidance from the federal government last week on the ARP funds came out. In the meantime, Deena has been working with our friends over at MML on some ways to put the state's funds. Now we're talking state funds. The state gets direct funding as well. Of course, the counties get direct funding. The state gets direct funding as well. One of the topics through a lot of the meetings we've been having is how to make sure these dollars go as far as possible, whether it's at the local level, the state level. How can we make sure that these funds are being used to the best that they can? And so Deena's been working with MML and has had some meetings with some other folks about that. So Deena, why don't you fill everyone in? And before you start, of course, if you have questions, you can type your questions into our chat, and we will get to the answer to those questions at the end. So Deena.
Great. Thanks, Steve. We've mentioned it to a couple of our internal committees and some of the regional meetings that Meghann and I have been participating on. But MAC worked with the Michigan Municipal League to come up with a list of items that we submitted to the state budget office last week that we think would be really good for match programs. And by match programs, that means that we ask the state to put up approximately, this ask was $4 billion. Whether we get $4 billion or not, still remains to be seen. But it was a list of issues where we think that it would be eligible expenditures for the state to use to make with their money. And it would be all different kinds of match programs, the details of which are far from being worked out yet. But it would be monies that the local units of government, so counties or cities or townships, could apply to these programs to pull down state American Rescue Plan dollars back into the county. And then you have your 50%, they have their 50%, and it just makes your dollars stretch that much further. This really stemmed from conversations that we've been having, for a couple of months now. Steve, when did you start meeting? A couple of months ago, you started meeting with Deena.
Yeah,
to talk about this. Yeah, and it was the state budget office that really said, bring us some transformational plans, some ideas. Tell us what you can do to not squander this money away. How can we help make it, good stretch as far as possible? And we asked, questions of county administrators, went back and looked at some of the ideas our county commissioners have had, and came up with this list to present. Now, I want to say, it's not set in stone. This is just something preliminary that we're starting to talk to the administration and to legislators about. We're going to present it to them. It's not anything that you would be mandated to participate in. It is just a way to try and stretch those dollars. Again, at the beginning phases of it, but eligible expenditures are eligible expenditures. Steve knows more about eligible expenditures than even I do at this point, but it could be capital improvement projects for your public health department or your jails for ventilation services. It could be, housing programs. Megan's going to talk about housing programs in a few minutes. It could be infrastructure. So it could be water, drinking water, stormwater management. It could be broadband, so we put together a whole comprehensive list of these things. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Hopefully, it's received well. From what I've heard so far, it has been received well. And I just want to put this out there, and we'll say it over and over again. You don't have to rush to spend these dollars. You have until December of 2024 to spend them. So let us work our process here a little bit and see if we can make your dollars double in some circumstances, so that you can utilize them for bigger projects in the county. But, stay tuned, keep in touch, ask us
Yeah.
questions.
That's a good point, Deena. Wait, because it's actually, even if you can even allocate those funds up until 2024 and spend them another 2 years later. So you could have a project that is still being worked on at the end of 2024, and you will still have access to those funds for another 2 years. So I think that's great advice that you just gave there, is that might be that's definitely a play here, is hold on to some of these funds, because you don't know what revenue loss is going to be in your 2 years from now. And that, if you are able to use it as revenue loss, that's going to give the most flexibility for these funds at the local level. You're going to be able to use it for basically however you want, because you lost revenue. So I think that's a good point that you brought up there with regards
And
to
mental health, I forgot. Meghann put some stuff in there on mental health too. So, pulling down some state dollars to assist with mental health programs. So, sorry, she thinks about those things.
But
And see too on the revenue loss, because I think this is a really good point, that number, Treasury guidance, is saying you can recalculate that year after year, right? So this is not just, okay, figure out your revenue loss from now, to the beginning of the pandemic, but what does that mean for you in 2022, 23, 24? Because we don't know what the fallout's going to be. And so you don't want to take all of that money and spend it all, and then you have, fallout lagging from different, property tax losses and that sort of thing. So there is an ability to recalculate that through the process.
Yep.
good point. So shifting gears a little bit to some state policy issues that we've been working on. Of course, the budget's still going on. They're still working through that budget process. That'll still go on for another probably month and a half or so at least. But outside of that, there's still some policy work being done. So Deena, why don't you tell us a little bit about the veterans property tax kind of fix that's we talked about a few weeks ago?
Yeah, we've been talking about this for years. This is that, 100% disabled veterans property tax exemption the legislature passed. I want to say it was 2016. And they didn't think it was going to be that much of a financial impact on local units of government. Well, doing the math, it's anywhere from $20 million to $35 million per year. We're still trying to gather all the data, but it's a significant loss of revenue for local units of government. And so we've got some bills that are going through the process right now. It is Representative Yarrick and LaFave who are really leading the charge. They want to have the state pay for, reimburse local units of government for their losses associated with this exemption. They're not asking the veteran to do anything else, which, we've tried to get the state to pay for this before, but in that legislation, we were having the veteran file twice. This legislation, the veteran doesn't have to do anything else. We just have to submit what our losses are, and then we would get a payment through the PILT system, payment in lieu of taxes system, to reimburse local units of government. Those bills have already had one hearing, and they have another hearing this week where I expect them to be voted out of committee, out of the House committee. One good thing for the veterans, another good thing for the veterans out of this is that they could file once every 5 years, unless something changes, instead of having to file every single year. So it's a win for them, and it's a win for local units of government. It's just, will the legislature adopt this reimbursement policy and give us the money back like they should? So we'll see.
At this point, has there been any opposition to this plan, Deena, that you've heard from?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, good. And then another veteran issue that we've been working on, it seems like forever, Meghann, has to do with that Veteran Service Fund. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, House Bill 4122. So Representative Glenn introduced this very early in the year. We worked on it last year in the fall with the Michigan Military and Veterans Affairs Agency, really to make sure some of the uses and kind of the changes that the agency made to really respond to COVID and allow counties to have some flexibility in how to use those funds, to make sure that that was really clear in law that was allowed. But also in doing that, we came up with some things that would streamline the entire administration of the grant program, really expanded what counties could be eligible, and kind of loosened up some of those parameters so more counties could get access to that $50,000 base grant. So, it's it's been, it was moving through the House pretty quickly. We wanted to get this done. There's not been any problems with it. But then when it got over to the Senate, it really just became difficult logistically, having a committee that was, posted, and then they had to cancel because they couldn't have a quorum, and then the budget discussions were coming up. So it's just kind of delayed, but we're expecting a hearing and a vote this week. And so hopefully we can get it out of the Senate committee, off the Senate floor, into the governor's desk very quickly here, which would be, great, because we also have the budget wrapping up in about a month, and that $4 million has been recommended by both the House, well, the governor, the House, and the Senate. So that money will be there. We just want to make sure the administration of that grant can function properly and easily.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
That'll be great.
it was obviously difficult to kind of maintain that funding level last year, so it makes sense to give us that flexibility for a year so that we can use those funds for the purpose that was intended. Deena, another piece of legislation, of course, we've been working on for years, 4-year county commissioner terms. We've gotten it out of committee unanimously. What are we expecting to hear some more movement on that?
So we have heard that it's going to be on general orders in the Senate on Thursday, which is great, which means a vote a week from tomorrow, probably. That's what I would plan on, is a vote next Tuesday, not this week, but next week. So if you have not reached out to your senators yet, please reach out to your senators and ask them to vote for Senate Bills 242 and 245. Extends county commissioner terms to 4 years. So hopefully, I think they're going to pass the Senate okay. And then we'll just have to work on getting a hearing in the House and getting them moved forward.
Yeah, that's great. It's good to hear that we're getting those moved again. Obviously something we've worked on for a long time and thought we had a good shot at it last year, but things go. Yeah, COVID hits, and
we're just gonna blame COVID for everything.
Yeah, true. I'm good with that. All right, and Meghann, there's two issues that are kind of newer to us this session. First, they had hearings last week for the first time on a fee bill. We heard from our friends at the Registered Deeds Association about this, something they're very concerned about. I know they testified on it. Can you tell us a little bit about the fee bill that hit last week?
Yeah, sure. So the Register of Deeds and the county treasurers had reached out as soon as these bills were introduced, House Bills 4729 through 4732. And they were introduced and had a hearing the next week. I mean, it was all very, very quick. And I think that kind of took a lot of people by surprise because, generally those are organizations, and Mac's an organization where we want to work with bill sponsors and understand the problem a little bit before something is just rolled out and put up in committee. But they did have a committee hearing on it. The bills basically try to manage the cost of property record requests. Zillow is the largest proponent behind this. And basically they've had some instances, maybe, one county that they've had trouble with getting certain property records from, or it's, very expensive. They haven't been successful negotiating different terms with individual counties. So they had some legislation introduced, but I think what the committee is hearing, and the registers of deeds had, done a good job kind of outlining that this does vary county by county, and maybe it's not the best move just to introduce legislation and, eliminate fees or give the company options for what kind of, so the bill talks about what kind of medium the records could be on, whether it could be electronically, or paper form. And so, legislating a solution to one county problem might not be the best way to go. So, Mac did oppose that, and we'll continue to work with, the legislature and the committee on that.
Yeah, that is, it seems like they should be able to come to an agreement if it's just one bad actor out there. If you want to even call it a bad actor, it sounds like it might just be a communication issue, but hopefully the legislature will see that and put an end to that legislation. And then finally, affordable housing. There's a package of bills, housing that has to do with housing. We hear about it a lot in northern communities. I even hear about it in, when I was up in the UP 2 falls ago about affordable housing up there. And there's a package of bills out there that kind of helps deal with that, right, Meghann?
Yeah, absolutely. So MAC, I'll back up though, because MAC actually joined a coalition, and that's how this legislation really started. So there's already been conversations just with the legislature and committees kind of talking about the need and the difficulty with, you know, obtaining affordable housing right now, something that counties and cities and everyone's been trying to figure out solutions for a while, but you know, we really need the state to kind of step in and play a role as well. So this coalition was formed, and MAC is part of that coalition. It consists of other local government entities, business communities, you know, community organizations, and so so it's a large coalition. I think it grows every day actually, and there's legislation now introduced in both the House and the Senate. It's bipartisan, and so really dealing with the whole, you know, broad solution to it, really putting more tools in the toolbox for municipalities to come up with different different ways to work with developers. There's some new statutes that would be created to create these attainable housing districts. And of course, from the county perspective, we're very interested in making sure that counties have a say in those new areas where, you know, property owners can apply for tax exemptions. So if these things are created, we really want the county to be able to have a say where those tax exemptions are allowed. There are a couple bills in the package though that we are still trying to work through some of those details on, where we have, you know, a locality putting through an expansion on our neighborhood enterprise zone area, and the county doesn't have a say in those instances. So if we're going to expand into those areas, we just really want to make sure that the counties can say whether or not that's allowed, and that they can withstand a reduction in that level of taxes. So, you know, I don't know if you have anything else to add to it. I think overall we're, you know, generally supportive of a large amount of the bills in the package, but I think there are just some details that we want to make sure counties have more of a role in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make, Meghann, because, you know, for so long, I think that the municipalities don't necessarily think of counties as economic development partners or housing development partners. And so I think, you know, by really having a say in all of this, we can start pushing that a little bit further and having them recognize the county is very much interested in economic development and affordable housing. Like Steve said, we've heard it all over the state from our county commissioners that this is an issue that they, you know, are really interested in. So we want to make sure you have a voice. So.
Well, thanks for that update, guys. Derek, are there any questions?
There are questions from our friend Stan Ponstein over in Kent County. Is there any hope for funding for conservation districts?
Deena?
You know, is there hope? I don't know. We used to work quite closely with conservation districts, and we haven't worked with them much this year. You know, maybe in ARP funds, if there's an eligibility. I haven't seen any kind of line item appropriation for conservation districts this year. Again, there hasn't been line items for conservation districts since what, 2007? It's been like a crazy amount of time. So yeah, Stan, is there hope? There's always hope, and I know that they're trying, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, next question from Brenda Tater in Montcalm County. Does the 1% revenue sharing increase with the string tied to it to maintain public safety expenditures at an amount not less than the FY21 expenditures have an exception for new law enforcement millages that took effect during the FY21 budget year?
No, but let me clarify a little bit. That 1% increase in the string attached to the public safety budget line item is only in the House version. It's not in the Senate version. And we're going to work really hard to get rid of it. The string attached to the 1%, though, that was in last year's budget and is still in both versions of the budget here, would be that 1% increase would have to go to any unfunded accrued liabilities. So it's a great point to make. Thank you. And if you could just send me an email with a little bit of information about your new law enforcement millage so that I can use that to make the argument to get that boilerplate removed, that would be very helpful to me.
And I think it's important to note too, we typically oppose any time the state tries to attach strings to any of our revenue sharing dollars.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83, the go-to source for all information about Michigan's 83 counties.